If you're new to our channel, we'd love to have you join our little community. Just hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. We promise it will be worth your while.
As I sat outside at the rear of the cafe for a short rest later that morning, two young women approached me. They were both pushing old-fashioned prams and were smiling as though they knew me. "Hello, David. I'm surprised to see you up and about so soon."
"Hello, Air."
"Oh yes, we haven't been introduced, have we? I'm Sally, and this is my friend Wendy." "Hi," said Wendy. She also gave me a nervous wave. "Hello there." I got up to shake their hands, but instead got a little kiss on the cheek off both of them. Morag then appeared from the kitchen. "Oh, good. You've been introduced. Would you like a snack or lunch, girls?" "No, thank you, Morag. We just called past on the off chance that David might like a walk down to the harbor with us," said Sally. Morag looked at me and could probably tell that I was a little nervous. "You will be safe, David, I promise you. Only the suicidal would attack a witch with young children." I hesitated. "Oh, go on. It'll be fun. I'll even buy us all an ice cream by the harbor," said Sally. I smiled at them. "Oh, okay, then you've twisted my arm." I got up to leave, but before I could, Morag produced a straw wide-brimmed sun hat from nowhere. "Here, with your complexion, you'll need this, David." She placed it on my head and then said to Sally, "Be a dear, call into the chemist shop and get some Factor 30 for David, would you? She still has no idea how to look after herself yet." I felt quite insulted by Morag's comments, even if she was correct. "Want a push?" offered Sally. I nodded and took the handle of the pram and started to walk with Sally and Wendy towards the high Saint. Sally and Wendy were very friendly towards me, and as we walked, I kept glancing into the pram at the small baby peacefully sleeping on its back, only partly covered by a light sheet. She was beautiful. We stopped off at the chemist's as ordered, and Wendy went in whilst Sally and I stood outside with the prams. She returned with a carrier bag containing the sun cream, which Sally wasted no time in applying to my bare areas of skin. Down by the harbor, we found a large patch of unoccupied grass overlooking the sea. Sally placed several large blankets on the grass before sitting on the grass herself. Wendy took her baby from its pram, as it had woken, and sat down opposite us whilst holding her child in her arms. Sally took an old wicker picnic hamper from the small storage rack beneath her pram, and after opening it, set up a small feast in the center of the blankets. Sally's baby started to wake in its pram. "Oh, be a dear, would you, and hold her for me whilst I finish off." I got up and pulled down the hood shading Sally's daughter from the sun, and whilst cradling her head, I picked up the tiny child and held her gently to my chest whilst rocking her. My mind drifted back to when I was a young boy, and my mum had brought my baby sister Mags home from hospital for the first time. I thought that I would hate her, but when my mum let me hold my new sister in my arms, I fell in love with her instantly and knew that we would be the best of friends forever. I turned to stop the bright sunlight from getting into Sally's daughter's eyes and continued to rock her until she was sleeping peacefully once more. Earth calling David. I was so wrapped up in holding the baby, I'd completely forgotten I was in company. "Oh, sorry, I was just..." Wendy burst out laughing. "You'll make a wonderful mother someday, David, but not until you change your name to something a little less, male." I reluctantly passed the baby over to Sally, who placed it in the shade under an umbrella. She then offered me a selection of sandwiches from an ornate china plate. I took a beef and cucumber sandwich, and then offered a glass of juice, and we all sat in a circle facing each other. It surprised me to find out that both of these young women were over 200 years old, and that Sally was on maternity leave from her job as a nurse and midwife in Edinburgh. I really liked their company, and very soon I was feeling totally at ease talking to them. Sally noticed me looking over at the two babies sleeping together under the umbrella. "They are pretty, aren't they?" "Yes, they remind me of my sister when she'd just been born." Sally smiled almost knowingly. "We've talked to both Morag and..." She frowned as she paused. "And Diana, and know about your sister. There was nothing you could have done for her at the time except what you did." I swallowed. "I did nothing, Sally. I was completely powerless to help her. I was useless." Did she look forward to your visits, and did you visit as many times as you could? Yes, but I really did not want to talk about this, but somehow felt that I should. Did you comfort her as her condition deteriorated and treat her as a human, not just a patient? Yes. And did you sit nearly every weekend by her bedside and read her favorite stories to her? Yes, but I couldn't make her better, could I? What use was all of my training if I couldn't help my own sister? I sniffed as the tears started to pool in my eyes. David, you did everything that a loving brother could have done. You sat with her and talked to her and kept her company when she was feeling lonely and ensured that she could still enjoy her many books, and then at the very end, when the pneumonia was finally taking her life from her, you held her in your arms so that she wouldn't be alone in her final moments. You were your sister's hero, and you acted like one all the way up until she drew her last breath. I was now finding it hard to hold back my emotions as the memories of Mag's final moments came flooding back to me. I remembered being contacted by her consultant only 20 minutes before, as he knew I was studying on site. I rushed to see her. The consultant had warned me that the end was near for her. I had already contacted my parents at my auntie's house, but they were nearly an hour away in South Shields, so I sat on the bed with Mags, making sure that she could see my face. Eventually, as her breathing became more and more labored, I held her up and talked to her about our childhood and the things we'd done together until her heart finally stopped beating. At that point, her consultant ushered out all of the medical staff from the room and left Mags and I to be alone together for one last time. I felt a soft, warm arm come gently over my shoulder and then pull me in. Wendy was gently holding my head to her shoulder as I wept. She started to stroke my hair but said nothing. Sally passed me a clean hanky and sat by quietly. I should have hated her for dredging up my past, but oddly I felt relieved to have relieved it, and after a few minutes tried to apologize for my emotional outburst. No need, David. Everyone needs a shoulder to cry on at some point. You should have done this many years ago. I understand why you didn't, of course, but look where your male pride and anger got you. Sally was right, of course. I had been angry about my failure as a brother for so long. I'd wasted my talent, been disowned by my parents, and had finally become nothing more than a homeless junkie and vagrant. So much for me being the first doctor in our family. As I sat in the hot sunshine with my 2 new friends and their babies, I started to wonder 2 things. I started wondering about my parents, and if they were still alive after all this time. And secondly, I was starting to wonder why I'd worn both leggings and a skirt, as I was now starting to feel uncomfortably warm in my nether regions. Wendy must have noticed as she suggested, "Just go to the ladies and take off your leggings, David. You'll feel much cooler if you do." But my legs are really white. I'll look silly and I have no socks for my sandals. The sun will do them good. Off you go. I got up as ordered, slipped my sandals on without buckling them, and went over to the small concrete and brick building that served as a public lavatory. Quickly went into one of the cubicles and removed my leggings and knee-highs. I slipped back on my sandals, and quite self-consciously went back to see my 2 new friends. As I sat back down, Sally, who was now sitting holding her baby to her chest and feeding her through a slit in her blouse, said, "You look really good in a skirt, and once your legs have a little color, you will look amazing." Wendy threw me the suntan lotion, and I applied it to my pale legs. As Sally fed her baby, we chatted, and I ate a little more of the picnic. She noticed me glancing at her feeding and commented, "Yeah, if you may want to have a child at some point, David and I really would recommend it." I hadn't even thought about it, and it came as a shock to me that my transition would include all of the natural bodily functions that a woman has. I then started to touch my own tummy, thinking that at that very moment I could have my own womb developing within me. But what about eggs? Will I grow ovaries too? Oh yes, your testicles have probably already started their journey to becoming ovaries. Once you've opened up, it will just be a matter of time before you start menstruating. Opened up? Do you mean my air? Vagina, yes. Has it started yet, if you don't mind me asking? No, not yet, but my urethra has relocated, and there is a dark, thickening line on my scrotal skin. She turned to Wendy. Is that how it happened with you, Wend? Asked Sally. Wendy smiled at me. Pretty much so. Things look to be moving along nicely for you, though. When it happened to me, my papa tried to drown me. I was shocked at this. Drown you? That's horrible. Yes, if it hadn't been for Morag, I'd be in the spirit world now. There was so much I did not know about the magical world, and it was slowly dawning on me that it would probably take a very long time to learn it all. But Morag, Sally, Wendy, and Diana had really shown me nothing but kindness and understanding. They made me feel wanted and a part of something special. This made me happy, and I wasn't used to feeling this way. As Sally finished feeding her baby, she passed her over to me. Would you mind? I just want to give my nipples a quick wipe. Hold her with her head just over your shoulder and gently rub her back. That's it, you're a natural. I was soon rewarded for my efforts by a little milky drool on my shoulder. Wendy got up a few minutes later and returned with 3 ice cream cones, and as we sat enjoying our little treat, Sally asked, "Did Diana really try and protect you on the beach, David?" "Yes, she told me to run back to town, to run for my life while she faced whatever it was." "That's quite surprising to us. I mean, as you probably know, she isn't exactly the flavor of the century with us. In fact, the only reason we are now tolerating her is because Morag told us to," said Sally. There was still obviously a lot of bad feeling towards Diana here, but she'd done nothing to hurt me. I know that in the past, Diana wasn't the nicest of people. "That's an understatement, David," commented Wendy. "But she really did try to save me and nearly paid with her life trying to do it." "And you very nearly extinguished your own life trying to heal her, David. That was a particularly stupid thing to do. Why would you do that?" asked Sally. "Because she's my friend Sally." Sally's face mellowed visibly. "And she obviously has a very good friend in you. Maybe she has changed." I attempted to move the conversation away from Diana. "Who was that man attacking us? Does anyone know?" "Attacking Diana, you mean? Oh, that was Cameron. He's a complete arsehole and one of Diana's ex-lovers. We think that he may also be the sorcerer that initially turned her." "Oh, did I mention he was an arsehole?" explained Sally. "So was he responsible for Diana going over to the dark side then?" Sally smiled. "Oh, we are going to have such fun together over the next few weeks, David." "Few weeks?" I inquired. "Yes, when you are not with Morag being taught the finer aspects of the craft, you will be spending a lot of time with Wendy and I." "Oh, and what will you be teaching me then?" "How to be a proper girl, silly. Oh, and I think we'll start now, as to continue calling you David is probably going to attract some unwanted attention outside the village." Wendy suppressed a little snigger at Sally's comment, and I finally resigned myself to changing my name to something more feminine. So then Wendy and Sally started to bombard me with a constant barrage of names, some sensible and some not so. Maureen, Doris, Grace, Susan, Tiffany, Prudence, Astrid, Joy. I liked none of the names that they suggested. None of them felt right. "Did your parents ever mention to you what they may have called you if you'd been born a girl?" asked Wendy hopefully. I thought for a second and then remembered. It would have been Magdalene. Sally must have noticed my face first, and she asked softly, "Was it your sister's name, David?" I just nodded. "Magdalene is a beautiful name. It would really suit you and would honor your sister's memory." She continued, "I admit I did like the thought of being renamed in honor of my sister. We could compromise. You could keep Magdalene for the best, and we could just call you Maggie in normal conversation." "Not Mags?" I inquired. "No, that was your name for her." I started to smile once more as I was warming to the idea. "Okay, I'll give it a try, Maggie it is." Not long afterwards, Sally started to pack up our picnic, and we all then headed back to Morag's home. I found out later that evening, as I'd curled up on one of Morag's very comfortable seats with a cup of frothy cocoa, that Sally and Wendy had volunteered to help mentor me, and to protect me from any further incidents until I could defend myself without causing myself further injury. Every morning just after waking, I now did what was now becoming a little ritual for me. I stripped naked and explored the latest changes in my body. After 2 days, my member had shrunken so much as to just become a small hooded lump above my urethra. The pink line running from my anus, the perineal raphe, and along through my ex-scrotum, the scrotal raphe, was now starting to split into two parallel pink lines at my scrotum. This splitting I assumed to be the beginnings of my labia lips. My breasts were also now starting to slowly fill out now, and weren't just silly little buds of annoying, sensitive flesh anymore. My hair was still growing at an accelerated rate, and over the next week the final dark and graying sections of my growing hair were removed by my stylist, so I now had an entire head of short strawberry blonde hair. My pubic hair was also changing color, but at a much slower pace, which I was speeding up by trimming and shaving. My complexion and overall skin condition had improved immeasurably now, and I no longer supported the telltale track marks of an old and worn-out drug user, and as the elastin returned to my connective tissues, making my complexion firmer and more youthful-looking, my wrinkles slowly receded. Myself, and how did I feel in myself? That was an easy answer. I felt wonderful, if a little weepy sometimes. After a speedy convalescence, Diana resumed her communications with me and kept me appraised of what was happening with Emily and her recovery. I was overjoyed to hear that Emily's muscles were now responding well to the electrostimulation. And with Diana's encouragement, Emily was booked to go for a long stay at a specialist recuperation center soon for an intensive course of physio and hydrotherapy. I asked Diana if she was now fully recovered from her attack, but her only reply was, "Can't grumble." Late the next week, whilst I was doing my daily examination of my changes, the only real differences I could see apart from my lengthening hair, 3 inches in a week, and the increasing size of my boobs, was that the 2 lines on my scrotum had now thickened, and the area to either side of them had become a little puffy. This made me smile, as I knew that probably quite soon my vagina would start to open up within. Sally and Wendy took it upon themselves to have a girls' day out with me in Edinburgh. They managed to get babysitters for their daughters, and we set off early one Monday morning by bus into Scotland's capital city. I was both nervous and very excited about my trip. I had already changed once today, as apparently I wasn't dressed girly enough, so both Wendy and Sally had dragged me back up into my bedroom and somehow managed to find a sundress I didn't know I owned and a pair of nude tights. I was allowed to keep my soft leather moccasins, however, and the light cardigan in case it got cooler later. Almost the second we arrived at our stop, I was overcome with a sense of adventure for the old historic city and started asking excitedly about some of the places I'd visited when I was a schoolboy. I was a little disappointed to find that the waxworks was no longer there, but Sally jokingly assured me that the castle would still be there. So we all slowly headed up the Royal Mile towards the castle, looking in shop windows and occasionally browsing through clothing shops. We held hands on occasions and chatted constantly. It wasn't until we reached the castle grounds that I realized I was completely at ease with myself. I suppressed a little tear as I realized that my old self was now almost gone forever, but consoled myself with the thought that a new and confident young woman was starting to emerge. As along with my gray hair, my wrinkles had now just about vanished too. And every time I looked into my mirror, I saw a pretty lightly freckled face looking back at me. The best bit was that she was almost always smiling. We dined in the castle for lunch, and at 1 o'clock as we were walking and admiring the views of the Firth of Forth, I nearly jumped out of my skin as somewhere near us there was a huge bang as a cannon was fired. "I forgot about that. Now that does bring back memories," commented Wendy. "Yes, I used to adjust the old grandfather clock to it when we lived here." "Oh, now when was it?" I sometimes forget that both Sally and Wendy were in reality very, very old. Sally then guided me over to a short stone wall, and as I looked down on the city said, "Lay your hands palm down on the top of the wall, Maggie, and concentrate on the Firth. Try to think of what it was like, let's say 150 years ago." "Really?" I asked. "Yes, just give it a go, see what happens." I laid my hands on the top of the stone wall and concentrated. Slowly what I was seeing started to change. The modern buildings started to vanish from the skyline one by one, and the clear sky became a little murky as I could now see the dark smoke belching from many chimneys and creating an almost orange haze in the distance. A few seconds later, the sky started to slowly clear once more, and in the distance, I could see many sailing ships along the shoreline. "Oh, this is great," It is, isn't it? Keep concentrating. See how far back you can go. I must warn you, though, it may become a little bloody. I watched as fashions changed and time retreated. I could see soldiers dressed in red, and then a battle, and then nothing. The images have stopped, Sally. Oh, pooh, that must be all that particular stone had seen. It must be a relatively new one. I released the stone and was instantly restored to the present. That was brilliant. Does that work with any old building? Sally could see my enthusiasm. Pretty much so, Maggie, but be really careful of some of the older buildings, especially if atrocities were carried out there, as they can be very disturbing, and the energies can be very dark. So how does it work then? I asked. Nobody really knows but stone, and to a lesser extent bricks and wood seems to have the ability to store moments in history. A bit like a USB memory stick, I suppose. I can't wait to try on other buildings, Sally. Good, as it can be a very useful way of learning our history. Sally, Wendy, and I then headed back down out of the castle, and after a brilliant visit to an art gallery and a walk through the nearby park, we ended up shopping. I'd been wearing my cool sundress all day now, and I absolutely loved its freedom and lightness. Even the tights I wore were really comfortable and gave my now shapely and smooth legs a hint of much-needed color. Once or twice I felt a chill, and wished I'd brought a coat, but just slipping into the cardigan for a few minutes usually warmed me up. As we browsed through the many racks of clothing in a charity shop, Wendy asked, "Are you considering buying another dress, Maggie?" Actually, yes. And if the comfort of the one I'm wearing is anything to go by, I think I'll be buying a lot more in the future, too. I did a little twirl, allowing my skirt to flare out. Wendy came over and hugged me. That's the spirit. Let's be naughty then, shall we? I nodded. Sally just sighed and smiled. I then realized that I had absolutely no money at all, and that my two friends had been paying for me all day. My face must have given my thoughts away, as both Sally and Wendy burst out laughing. I see that the penny has just dropped, Maggie. Oh, the look on your face. I, however, didn't think it funny at all and could feel myself becoming upset. Oh, no, you don't, young lady. Don't you dare get upset today as our treat. No, I can't ask you to. Can we just go home now, please? Sally came over to me and lifted my chin up, so I was forced to look her in the eyes. We didn't become your friend out of duty, Maggie. We did it because we both felt a connection to you, Wendy, and I think of you more like an honorary sister now, and as such we are going to help you build your wardrobe. So get those new emotions of yours back under control. We have some serious shopping to do. The rest of the afternoon was spent with us exploring little boutiques inside some of the high street stores, and curiously my favorites, the charity shops, as some of the older garments on their racks were beautiful and so deliciously feminine. I found out to my delight just before we finished our marathon shopping trip that I was now a full A cup, and Wendy bought me 3 of the most feminine and silkiest little bras I'd ever seen. You are a big girl now, Maggie, and as such should be wearing the silkiest and prettiest underwear you can find. I was wearing one of my new bras as we boarded the bus back to North Berwick, and felt wonderful after my day out.